Welcome Virgo to your in-depth monthly horoscope for July 2024 for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. On the screen now I'm sharing the event chart right at the start of the month, which gives us some very important pointers. Not least, we need to be mindful of your ruler Mercury. It's in house 11, the sign of Cancer, very much about feeling, but feelings around your connections to others, but particularly socially through your group activities or also friendships. But it's forging a fantastic link to Uranus, the planet of surprises, which has been pushing you since 2019 to be a bit more out there, try some different approaches, shake things up. So it's possible as you come into this month that your networking is expanding, particularly towards people who share your interests, but also some people who may be a little different, perhaps rather more challenging, but certainly not dull. But also Venus is in this part of your situation. If you are in a romantic relationship, Venus is asking you here to celebrate the things you have in common rather than be so mindful of the things that make you different. But again, if you're being very interactive, Venus is linked to Mars in the sign of Taurus, very strong. And these two very much to do with relating, but particularly in a romantic sphere. If you are traveling or you're on a vacation, that combination between Mars and Venus, very dynamic. So you could meet someone new who can make your pulse race, particularly with Uranus linking back to Mercury. And the more surprising and unexpected it is, the more fascinating it could be to you. But we also have the Sun in house 11, asking you to think very much about your future, but also about your highest hopes. And that's linking perfectly to the Moon, like Uranus and Mars in the sign of Taurus. So that ninth house energy, asking you to be more experimental, but also a truth seeker. The 11th house about your long-term plan, but also your values and the people you're hanging out with. But as we go into the first week of this month, Venus, the planet of relating, forges a closer link to Saturn, which has been creating the potential for some challenges around relationships over the last year and a quarter. It's possible that you may have started to set your boundaries more firmly. It's also possible that some people have gone out of your situation, or is it one person in particular? But the people who are in your world now, whether they're new players or those solid citizens who've been with you for a long time, you can celebrate the quality of those ties with Venus aligning to Saturn in such a positive way. But Jupiter, the planet of growth, optimism and good fortune, is also in your sector of success, where it's going to be for the following year. And it's linking perfectly to the Moon, but also the Sun in a semi-sextile. So Jupiter's very much the pivot for all of us as we go into this new month. And it's asking you to be mindful of perhaps downloading new information, new ways of approaching things, expanding your knowledge, but particularly around your professional situation. But I think if you're open to change, but also developing your connections, who you know can be just as important as what you know. So that sets the scene as we come into this new month. But then Mercury, your ruler, shakes things up, because on the 2nd it moves into the sign of Leo. Mercury likes being in Leo, to be honest, because the fire gives it more get-go than the water of the host it had been of Cancer. But for you, this is house 12, and this can be where we think very deeply and just do some research, but it is almost immediately going into an opposition with the power broker of the zodiac, Pluto, which has been pushing you since the 21st of January and even for 11 weeks last year to think about how you can change some of the basic patterns in your life, possibly around work, health, fitness. And that opposition suggests that some tensions could be created. And it's possible right through the rest of this month, to be honest, that some things that maybe you have been a little resistant to changing or haven't quite been going in the direction you want could give you pause to stop and to think, and perhaps need to recalibrate your approach, because when Mercury and Pluto are in opposition, we can get very strident viewpoints exchanged. But what can come up is someone could be more critical of you in a way which could surprise you. Now, Virgos have a reputation of being a bit picky at times. Do you think that's fair? I'm not saying it is. I think each chart, each natal chart, needs to be assessed on its own merits. But you may find that someone may zone in on something around what you do and just pick out something, perhaps in a more Virgoan type of way, with that clash. But on the 5th, we have a powerful new moon. Perhaps the best new moon of the year in terms of the moon's energy, because it's in the sign it rules of, Cancer. And this really is asking you to enjoy those connections to others. But because Mercury has moved into your 12th house, you're going to be much more orientated towards people that you really trust. And if there is anyone that you're not quite so sure of, this is a particular new moon which is asking you not to be too free and easy with your affections or your generosity. But an 11th house new moon is certainly very good if you have got more work to do in terms of plotting your future plan. But also, if you do want to just get together with people and have some fun, this is a lovely moment of the year. Is there a challenge? Well, there is, because there is a T-square with the nodal axis. For you, this goes across your 8th and 2nd houses, which very much about shared resources, values, money, to be frank. If you recall, since last July, once the North Node, the point of destiny, moved into Aries, joining up with Chiron, the wounded healer, if earning money has become a little more complex, or you've had to work harder at your deep connections to others, not a complete surprise. So as much as the new moon can be very idealistic, you can't be idealistic without being pragmatic on this particular year's Cancer new moon. But on the 12th, Venus, the planet of love and affection, joins up with Mercury, your ruler, in your 12th house. Venus moving into this area can make us hugely nostalgic. It can also make us much more conscious of issues to do with sincerity, honesty, loyalty. If there is someone around you that you're not so sure of, whether it is someone who has been a newer player in your situation, or someone who hasn't quite tuned into and been as understanding or empathetic of your current circumstances, you may want to have a little bit of a distance. Equally, it could be that your mind goes back to an old flame or someone who's no longer even in this world. And there may be a need to go through your emotions and release any sadnesses that you may be experiencing. But if a relationship has really been bumping along the bottom, and what that energy in Cancer has taught you, that you don't want to be in a long-term involvement with that person, this could be the cut point when you make the decision to start to move away. And obviously, any separation, whether it's in a business relationship, a friendship, a love affair, or even within the family, can be quite the process. It's not necessarily easy. And because Venus, like Mercury, goes face to face with Pluto, it's a transformation. And Pluto is keeping things very practical and very precise. In the sign of Aquarius, it's a bit more detached, logical, which actually can feel cool, a bit like the swords cards in tarot. Whereas the position of Venus in the hot sign of Leo, very much about being very demonstrative. So if you're feeling there is a lack of obvious affection coming from someone, it can start to affect you even if you don't separate. But another way of looking at Venus in Leo is that it can also see you thinking very, very carefully about what you do want from your future if you're not in a relationship. And if you're feeling a sadness about that, or you're feeling a sense that there is something missing in your world, what this period can do is give you an opportunity to work with those energies, become much more conscious of what you would really like to manifest. So you can turn it to a positive for sure. And it's also possible for some people that a relationship could start to develop, but in a very low key or even confidential way. So if you start to forge a connection to someone who's not fully available, or you're not fully available, or you want to keep it private between you for the time being, again, not a total surprise. But the 20th is a big moment of this month because Mars starts July up until the 20th in your 9th house, which is really pushing you to support that Uranian energy that's been quite challenging and provocative at times since March 2019 in terms of asking you to change things up. Mars has given you much more thrust to do that, but the area that may be right for a change could be around your work. So Mars moving right to the top of your chart, the 10th house, joining up with Jupiter, not in an exact conjunction at this point of the month, but this gives you a much greater thrust when it comes to goals and ambitions. And then we have the second of the 2 consecutive Capricorn full moons. But the last one was snagged by the dreamy, drifting energies of Neptune, but also those cool and detached vibes of Pluto. This one is actually supported by Neptune and also Uranus in that 9th house like Mars was. So something around balancing your time and energy, because the 5th house energy of the full moon is urging you to manifest your individual talents. The 11th house is where you connect to others and what they may need from you. But this time I feel that you can get the balance better for you. And with Mars going into such a self-confident and authoritative part of your scope for the following 6 weeks, if you really do want to take your career in a different direction, that's a tremendous connection to have. But on the 22nd, the Sun joins with Mercury and Venus in the sign of Leo. Leo is a sign that's ruled by the Sun, so the Sun coming back here is a huge moment for us all. But for you personally, the 12th house passage of the Sun can be where you pause and concentrate more on the healing dynamic in your situation, making sense of some of the things that have come up over the previous couple of weeks since Mercury and Venus moved, because clearly at the start of the month it was very dynamic and very positive for you. So why the shift? Well, the planets are just asking you to go through that positivity from the start of July to check out it really is meaningful. So, for example, we can have a hope, which is very much the 11th house, but then that turns out not to work out because there isn't enough practicality in that idea or that situation for it to be sustained. And being an earth sign like you are, you do like to see things in a tangible way. It can't just be theoretical. But on the 25th, Mercury, your ruler, returns home. And I think this is really going to be a fantastic moment for you because it gives you a chance to move your thinking into the present in a much greater way, not feel quite so caught up in some vague anxieties or lower physical vitality. The Sun's still going to ask you for the following 3.5 weeks to work through some deep stuff, but Mercury definitely is helping you to prep up what is going to be a new cycle once the Sun moves into your sign next month. So you've got that excitement to look forward to. But the Sun going face to face with Pluto again, if there is something that you've done over a very, very long period of time that's been a big part of your world, perhaps you've provided some support services, some detailings, perhaps you've managed something very precisely, potential for something that's been very significantly part of the fabric of your life for eons to come or start to come to an end is very strong this month. But that 9th house energy at the start of the month, together with that 11th house energy, is telling you if you can be dynamic and work towards the things that are really exciting you now and not be so caught up in what you have been doing for so long, there is a key window of opportunity because Mars forges an amazing link with Pluto from the 20th. If you did want to apply for a new job, raise your profile, be much more driven and ambitious, that combination is brilliant. But ironically, Mars and the Sun forge a great link, but perhaps in another way, what you do need to do is work behind the scenes on this new approach and do lots of research to really fulfill the ambition that Mars can bring. And I think by the time the Sun does enter Virgo next month, you are going to see something come into reality, a new beginning which can be incredibly exciting for you. So you've got the potential for something new, exciting and dynamic, but also something that's been a big part of your existence for a long time. Perhaps a friendship, perhaps a relationship, perhaps an interest, perhaps a job, perhaps a role, but actually it's two very conflicting but also contrasting energies coexisting. And then with Chiron going into a retrograde towards the end of this month, if there has been some kind of dependency around how you've earned a living, or you've been very strongly connected to someone else who's been very successful, or a business that has, you're being asked over the next 5 months to come to terms with the fact that you may need to recreate your reality in a fresh way. So in total, Virgo, it's a very, very exciting month, but as ever with astrology, it's a lot to do with cycles. Some of the cycles are so exciting, like that link between Mars and Pluto, which can give you so much thrust around the start of week 3. But Pluto and the Sun and Venus and Mercury all being challenged suggests that something that you may have been attached to may be in the process of just melting away. And the more philosophical you can be about that, the more you can create the space within you to welcome in a new future, which will become much more strongly obvious for you in August. I hope you have a great month. Thank you for joining me. If you've yet to subscribe, please do so now.